Check, check, check. Check, 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 check. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah.
It's no big deal, really. And just look at me or Steve, not the camera, will be
Okay.
better. And it's just sort of real simple stuff. What do you want to start with? Do you want to start about basics about the history of it, or do you want to start with
I can start
your
with
involvement? Or
I can kind of start with Fairfield being the home of the first Iowa State Fair.
Cool, yeah.
And then 100 years they moved it to Des Moines, and then 50 years ago they had the first ride from Fairfield to Des Moines with a horse caravan. And then this year the group, well, actually started with the Fair Board. Orville Brown was the one that brought the idea to the Fair Board to see if we would want to get this ride together to go to Des Moines this year for the 150th Iowa State Fair. So he brought it to the Fair Board, and they thought it was a good idea, and there were certain Fair Board members that got together and worked on this committee. And it took 2 years approximately to pull this thing together.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it must be a lot of organization and stuff, but it was really hard, huh?
Mm-hmm. There was a lot more red tape to go through now than I'm sure there was 50 years ago. You didn't just say, hey, who wants to ride, let's go. You had to have forms and medical releases and all that to go through too.
And it was a bigger, sort of a bigger deal this year than 50 years ago, right?
We had approximately 400 pre-registered people, and then we would pick up people along the way that would ride. They would jump in and ride, and so it got pretty big by the time we got there.
It had like a lot of, how many states or?
We had, I believe, 17 or 18 states, and Hawaii and Alaska were the two furthest away.
Who rides covered wagons in Hawaii? Who are these people? So I guess there's also some stuff like, I think that this will be explained, but do you want to talk about like how far it is, or how long it takes to do the ride, or I guess I can ask you about that.
That's Steve's question, yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So how did you, where in those 2 years, how did you get involved?
I was on the Fair Board.
Yeah.
So there were Steve Fritchen and myself, Orville Brown, and Doug Johnson, and then the Extension Director Ron Bauer that worked pretty extensively. And then we brought people from within the community that wanted to help and were in certain organizations that we thought would benefit. So those were basically the executive committee that met to try to plan this thing.
And what was you're the headquarters committee chairman or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And
Yeah.
what kind of stuff did you?
What we did was we handled the registration, and then everyone that registered also got a packet that included a commemorative bag and a book and T-shirt, lapel pins. There was different things that went into this bag, and so we put all those together. And then we also, when people came in, we checked them in, make sure they had all their forms signed properly, and then we pretty much took all that information with us all the way through the ride. Judy Herzog and Shirley Thompson did a quilt hanging, and we sold raffle tickets for that, and that went along the whole way of the ride. And then the drawing for the quilt hanging was done the last day of the Iowa State Fair for that. So there was those kinds of things that we took off and we did throughout the ride, plus worked on that prior to the ride.
And so you made it like so that people could remember it, or
Mm-hmm.
why did you want to? I mean, not like I don't actually know, but could you tell us a little bit why you wanted to make it commemorative?
Well, it's probably a once-in-a-lifetime thing for a lot of people, and we wanted to make sure that they had memorabilia to take with them from the ride. I mean, I'm sure they also had their own pictures and things, but there were a lot of like the commemorative book that told about the ride 50 years ago and then what it took to plan it the now 50 years later. So that was a pretty interesting book, and plus just some of the other things, the T-shirts and those kinds of things that they could have.
Do you think that it's or why do you think it's like important, this sort of thing, like to do this ride or something?
I think it's a pretty big experience to be able to make it from Fairfield all the way to Des Moines on horseback or in covered wagon, and to do that and to meet the people that, you know, from all over, it was a very fun experience for a lot of people and a lot of once-in-a-lifetime family vacations for a lot of people too.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you talked about that it took a lot more organizing, a lot more work to do than in 1954. What kind of was that the only? Were there any other challenges that you had to go through?
Oh, we had to go and meet with each county sheriff and engineer's office and city police and all that. You had to make sure you had all of that lined up when you came through their town or their county. DOT, we met with them extensively, and Highway Patrol, so that they were there for any crossings of state highways. What else? I don't know what else. There was a lot of things that we had to go through just to be able to make the ride safely, and luckily we did.
What about just like feeding people? I mean,
We contacted Hy-Vee, and then each of the overnight stops, we had to go and we contacted farmers. Well, Steve could probably get more in depth on this, but we contacted farmers along the way that we wanted to stay either at a noon stop or overnight stop, and then we had to work that deal out with them. Hy-Vee provided all the noon lunches, so they were in a semi, and we would just hand out a sack lunch as the riders came in. And then the evening meals were usually planned by whatever town we were in, whether it was Kiwanis putting on or some organization there in town.
were people pretty excited to get
Very
lunch
receptive.
meal?
Yeah, well, everyone, the towns that we stayed at were very receptive in having that many people come in. I mean, which kind of surprised us because that was quite a few people coming into their town. So they were good about that. The riders were really good at and happy with the noon meal, the sack lunch. Hy-Vee did a good job there, and they were, when they're riding like that, they don't want a lot to eat when you're bouncing around in a wagon or a horse, so just a simple sack lunch was good enough.
What about like showers, or did people got taken away to sort of to take showers and stuff each night, or?
Right, we had school buses that would load you up and take you into mostly the high schools or whatever and showered, and you would do that while they're eating or whatever. They would take different shifts and take you to the high schools to shower.
They didn't do that in '54, right?
No.
No, siree. So, do you have any stories? Was there any of your like favorite stories from the trip, or that you?
Asking me to remember that now. Gosh, I don't know. Yeah, it was fun, and it was a once in a lifetime thing, and I'm glad I did it. But it was very busy. I mean, you would get up at 3 o'clock. They'd start moving trailers, and then breakfast would come in like at 5:30 because they would get up and they'd move the trailers, and then the school bus would follow, leave the trailers, bring those people back so they could eat breakfast and get ready to ride, and you would be pulled out by 7. And we tried to be completely gone and on the road by 7:30. And so that you would go all day just constantly. There was a couple days that I drove the rear tractor on the ride, and so I got to see a lot more of that than if I was just kind of in between and trying to shoot some pictures and stuff. So that was really fun. And then at the noon stop, you'd be busy again, and I mean, they didn't take much time to stop and rest, and you were on the road again.
How do you feel once you get in?
Tired.
Yeah.
Very tired. And then by the time you showered and you ate and you kind of got your horses all bedded down and things, I mean, it was late and it was short night.
It was an early morning coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you shot some video, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just got this video. I had been like editing all of Gage Chapman's video, and then Susan Kessel said, "Well, what about that other video?" I said, "What other video?" She said, "Colleen's video." I said, "Oh, what?" I've been working for so long, and it's my fault. I guess I didn't see it sitting on my desk or whatever. But so I just started looking at your video. But she said that there was something about that your dad competed once you got up to the state fair, or am I in the wrong person? Okay, it's the wrong
Wasn't
person.
me. Mm-mm.
I thought something happened with your dad. I was supposed to ask about your dad or something.
Nope.
Wrong. Info. Okay, fair enough. What do you think? What do you think about 2054?
I'll be glad to watch someone else do it. Like I said, it was a nice experience, but it was a lot of work.
And is there, I mean, I think we're pretty much done. Is there anything that is there anything that you're real proud of or anything like that? Any sort of...
I had a great group of people that helped me with Headquarters Committee, and I could not have done that if it had not been for their help. And they worked hard, and we had a lot of fun. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people that I met on the way, and it was a great experience.
Great. Well, I think we got it.
Didn't tell you much.
Make you nervous, Colleen does?
Mm-mm.
You're not nervous, right?
I don't get nervous.
So, all right. So tell me what, even though I already know, tell me what you did.
I was the trail boss on the ride.
And what does that involve?
What's that involve?
A whole lot.
That involves leading over 400 people that some know a lot about horses and some know very little about horses. Over 123 miles.
And is it your responsibility to get them there safely too? Or?
Safe and sound.
Is it dangerous?
I had a good bunch of outriders. I had 6 guys that helped me. Bill Ward, Bill Painter, Brent Howard, Janet Clarkson, Bob McCormick. There's one more. George Benson. And 5 of them were, I called them cowboys because 3 of them could throw ropes, and that's what I needed in case something went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very good with people. Excellent.
Well, I'm from Wyoming, and
Mm-hmm.
I know about it. Like
Mm-hmm.
what you mean. But if somebody was watching who didn't know what you mean, what kind of thing could happen, or did anything happen?
Oh yeah, we had a team of mules outside of town break away, and a car was going around it, and it hit the car. It went in the ditch, flopped over. I just happened to be in close by, and my outriders and I carried 2-way radios, and they hollered to come back, and we set the wagon up, pushed it up, hitched the team back up, went on down the road. We called them the Flying W because they had Flying W's on the front feet if they had to stop them to pull them for brakes.
Oh yeah.
And
so I guess 2-way radios. That's one thing that would be
Yep.
different from 1954. Cell phones and everything.
yeah, I had a cell phone stuck to my ear 70% of the time, and a 2-way radio going off 100% of the time.
So do you think would you have rather had it in the 54 way or the?
No, I think this way worked out better with all the way that we had to go through towns. And, back in 54, people didn't know that much about, or they knew more about horses than they do now. And a lot more traffic, cars up and down the road, semis.
Well, you crossed over some pretty major highways, right? Well,
Mhm.
I guess you rode right down 34 and then you crossed over 63 or?
No, we crossed 34 and went up through Abington.
Oh.
And ended up in Ottumwa at the airport. So we had to cross 163 or 149 north of Ottumwa.
Yeah, I've got some of that footage. It's so funny and weird looking, these cars
Yeah.
going by, And I just hope that, I guess I'll edit it, and I don't really know if it'll be good enough to last, but I always laugh because we were looking at the old cars from the 50s,
Mhm.
and I just think, well, in 50 years, this will be awesome looking to see.
How the cars, yeah.
Yeah, new cars going by with these covered wagons going by and stuff. So, do you want to talk a little bit about, or do you mind talking a little bit about how it got started, what the whole thing is?
How I got involved with it? Or
Sure.
I was on the fair board, and Orville Brown had brought it up to the fair board, and I was interested because I just wanted to go. So I kept going to the meetings, and they was wanting to go up 34 and 163 like they did before, and I kept saying you can't do it. And I kind of put my foot down. So one meeting we nominated officers, or however you'd say it, committees, and they nominated me as the trail boss since I was the most horse person there, I should say.
All right. Horse savvy.
Yeah. And that's how it got I got involved in it. I was just going to go for the ride and enjoy it, but I got involved, and Doug Johnson and we did the routing after I got them convinced that we couldn't go up 163 because it's too dangerous. We had to take gravel. My preference was.
That's what it seems like to me. It seems like it'd be
Yeah.
crazy to be going with cars going by that fast.
Yeah.
Waiting
And
for
after
something to happen.
And after people seen what could happen, like that wagon getting dumped over in the ditch crossing the lane of traffic, they understood why I wanted to go that way. They understood what I had in my mind. I couldn't get it through their heads to start with, but afterwards,
Yeah.
they're going, "Oh yeah, you were right."
Well, you were saying like in '54 people knew more about horses. I mean,
It was still the horse era then, or they still worked with horses in the fields and some.
more often than
Yeah,
now.
today. And how many semis and stuff you got up and down the road now than you did in '54, and cars traveling, and they didn't travel near as much then.
Do you think it was more of a challenge this time to do
Oh
it?
yeah, I think so.
Even though, what were some of the, or I guess, why would you think it would be more of a challenge this time so that we don't have to hear my dumb voice talking?
Challenge.
Or
With-
even
with
if you just want to say what were what were
Some of the
different-
obstacles.
or yeah, what were some of the major obstacles?
Our obstacles was the shortest way to get there was my biggest concern because I want to keep the miles down during the day. And I had to find out the shortest route without taking the highway because yes, going up 34 and 163 would have been there in no time. But for safety reasons, I chose gravel. They wanted to go on 163, but we had to put crossovers in the lanes. They took it clear to the governor, and that it didn't fly, which I knew. Personally, I didn't think it would. And what were some of the more obstacles I had? Going through towns, Pella, there was never, they don't allow horses in the parades, I guess, up there. I didn't know that because of the manure.
They're so clean.
Yeah.
God, they like everything. And they trim their lawns and everything. The whole town is so tidy. every
Yeah.
time I went up there yet.
And we had to hire a street sweeper to clean up after us. We got it's an R&R out of Ottumwa. They come in, cleaned up at noon stops, and when we left in the mornings.
They had a pretty good welcome for you. You did a parade in Pella, right?
Yeah. We stopped outside of Pella, and we all lined up and we paraded in town, and people were just oohing and awing. So usually at dinner time, I had a little chat on the microphone before we left after dinner. I said, "Hey," I said, "everybody looked great coming in." I said, "Line up for parade formation." I said, "We're leaving town the same way we come in." I said, "We look great." And everybody cheered and hollered, and it was pretty neat. We did look good.
Good. And what about when you went to Des Moines? Was that
Same way. Yep. All it is, told them pass the word, parade formation. Everybody bunched up within, probably 20 feet of each other, 30, and it looked awesome.
good? It was proud. Made you proud.
Yep.
It's pretty cool to rally that many people together.
Oh man. It took me 3 days to calm down after we got to the fair. And it took me probably 2 weeks after that to figure out what just happened. I was like, wow. We got there safely. Nobody got hurt. Well, 2 guys.
So
2 accidents.
There were some accidents.
There was one before we left Fairfield. It was like 4 a.m. A guy was hitching a team, and the team got spooked. Somebody slammed the door and backed up, and he was underneath the team. And I thought, man, if this is the way this thing's going to start, it's going to be a long ways up there. And
It's just a minor accident?
He had broke his arm, and
Oh, that's
but
not so much.
yeah,
I mean,
but
I guess at least you can.
we had a guy fall out of a wagon in our noon stop at Oski. That was pretty serious. He fell on his head, and
What happened? Did he get? Was he just
He-
worn out?
he'd stepped off the wagon,
Oh, yeah,
and the
trip.
team moved, and he fell, and the wagon run over him when the team stepped ahead.
So this is, I mean, people who don't know about
Mhm.
this, it's serious business.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I think people see horses on, on movies and
Right.
everything like that. But I don't know if people really know, but just like what you're saying, like people understood in 1954 because it was like,
Yeah, it was still the way they grew up then. Still,
and do people know about it? I mean, what do you think people's?
I would say there was probably 20% of the people that went with us that they knew about horses when they was younger, didn't have them, and then they bought them to go on the ride, and weren't, I would call it horse smart. I mean, just,
Yeah.
and the rest of them, they were really good. They knew what was going on. They knew when to water, how much water. I mean, our noon stops, some people wanted water, some didn't.
How did the whole group of people operate? Did they end up coming together, or were they?
Oh, the whole group, they were excellent. After the first day and that evening, I give a talk and told them what I had in my mind. I give them one every night and at noon. Told them how things were going because they had no idea. And they were having fun because I was back and forth in the line. Oh, and that ride I figured I probably rode 180 miles
Just from
back and
going
forth. Yeah.
180 miles on a 140 mile ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I gathered. I just guessed it.
So, well, let's see, I feel like you guys are here. What do you think? I mean, I guess you probably won't ride in 2054.
If I'm able,
You will?
sure.
Would you repeat that back at me?
Yeah, if I'm able to ride in 2054, yes. You want to get that on tape and show it to me too.
How old will you be?
See, I'd be 89. Even if I have to go in a wagon, I'd go.
Sweet. Well,
Yeah.
it really was significant for you.
Yeah. Yeah. The people, they were great. After they got to know me, they were excellent. I had a couple of guys call me a congressman. They asked me how far, I'd say 5 miles. It'd be 10, 15 miles. How much further? 5 miles. One guy, he says, you should have been a congressman. I mean, it was fun like that the whole way through. And I was talking to Orville the other day, and he said he didn't get to enjoy it as much as I did because he was up front and I was back and forth all day long, and I knew more what was going on in the back. I enjoyed the ride more probably than he did.
Because of just being with the people?
Yeah.
With the-
Yeah, I was
the
back.
ride?
I was through the whole line majority of the time.
Well, I guess that's pretty much it. Unless you want to say, if there's anything you want to sort of say in closing about it or anything like that, if you're glad you did it, or if you
Yes.
did do it or whatever.
And yeah, I would do it again. They wanted me to do it again in 5 years, was it? They was asking to do it again in 5 years. They asked me if I'd do it, and that was right after we got to Des Moines. I was like, oh, I don't know. But yes, I would do it again. Anytime.
Did any of your family go with you? or
Yes, I have a stepdaughter and a wife went with me.
anything? And did they ride, or did
Oh
they
yeah,
ride in the wagon?
they rode the whole way. Yeah, she asked me one time. She goes, She was asking me a question, and I answered her real quick, and I was back on the phone and back on the radio. And I said, well, you just go about your business. We'll talk to you later at camp. But I was busy the whole time.
Really organizational, isn't it? Were people handling it pretty well, the miles, or?
Yeah, majority of them were. There were some sore people when we got into Ottumwa. Real sore when we got into Oski. Yeah, we had one horse that went down just outside Oski.
Just from being exhausted?
Exhaustion, yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I can understand, if you're riding a horse for that long, all day, I can understand being pretty sore, but do you get pretty sore on a wagon too? Or?
They said they were because they were sitting there in one spot all day and not, I mean, we only took 30 minutes for dinner, if that, and I wanted them back on the road because that was the heat of the day and I wanted to keep things moving.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of guys asked me, what time are we going to be in at noon? I said 11:30. He said, you hit it on the money every day. So we was there at 11:30. He says, how do you do that? I said, it took me 2 years to plan it and how many miles to know how many miles an hour to go. We run 3.8 mile an hour to 4 with our lead tractors, and that's how we set the pace.
So that's the tractor on the front and behind just kept it at the pace, and then everybody would just ride along with that?
Yep, in between them, we put the tractors out front and in the rear for protection so that somebody wouldn't come flying up behind, and we had signs on the front of them, and so that we was trying to do as safe as possible.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And it was fun. God, we had a good time.
I think that's fine. I think we've got something at least. I'm going to try and get 10 or 15 people so that everybody looks.
Well, if you ever.
So, let me grab my book. I guess I just want to know. You can go ahead, or do you want to just tell me like it's a story sort of how this one got started, or?
The idea of having the caravan from Fairfield to the Iowa State Fair started back in February of 2003 when the Jefferson County Fair Board here in Fairfield threw out the idea, how about reenacting the caravan that took place in 1954 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Iowa State Fair. Since 2004 is the 150th anniversary, let's commemorate that and let's have a caravan from Fairfield to Des Moines. Now the reason Fairfield is important is because the first Iowa State Fair was held in Fairfield, 1854, and in fact the second one in 1855. So that's why the Jefferson County Fair Board was instrumental in starting this. We presented the idea to the Iowa State Fair Board in February of '03, and they were receptive to the idea and asked us to go prepare a budget because financially, could we handle it? What would it take financially? What would it take equipment-wise to pull off an event of this type?
Let's just wait till that goes.
Okay.
One thing or another.
Yeah.
What would it take to pull it off financially, I think is.
Okay, the Fair Board asked us to, what would it take financially to pull this off? And so we said, well, haven't really worked on a budget yet. So they asked us to come back to Fairfield, work on a budget, kind of look at some equipment needs that we might have to do an event such as this. Now, we did that and was able to present a budget to the Iowa State Fair Board, which they accepted. And so we were off and running in the spring of 2003. So about 18 months before the fact, we started working on this event. Our initial projection was around 400 to 500 participants, and that would be people with 300 to 400 horses involved. We thought maybe about 50 wagons was what we would have, and the rest would be horseback riders. So we started to work on it. Now, an event of this size in today's world, which is different than it was in 1954, we have to worry about liability insurance concerns. Now, in 1954, they didn't worry about liability insurance. So today, that was our number one thing. Then once we got a budget developed, we said, we've got to have some protection for the organizers of the group, not the individual participants, just the organizers. We need liability insurance. And so we searched around, and we were able to work with the Jefferson County supervisors to be added to the Jefferson County policy. And so we were officially a committee of the Jefferson County, appointed by the supervisors. And so that's how we obtained our liability insurance policy. And we had to pay a premium, of course, and that came out of registration fees and things like that. Once we had insurance done, then we started thinking about how we got to register these people. Back in '54. They probably started the summer of the event. Now, we're some 18 months out. How are we going to do it? Well, we said, we got cell phones now. We got internet now, which it didn't have, 50 years ago. Let's use the internet. Let people sign up on the web. And so we hired an individual to develop a web page. And we put our information on the web page, put the registration form. They could download the form. And so we started registration in Thanksgiving of 2003 with our web page being officially open. And so that's how we did. Most of the registrations came in from downloaded forms from the web page. Good share of them did. We also then, of course, used cell phones for telephone. And that was, I don't know how we could have done it without the web page and cell phones, but I suppose we could have. We met every month for those 18 months, our core committee. We met every month, and we had, on that committee, we had representatives of the Jefferson County Fair Board, representatives from the city of Fairfield, the Jefferson County Supervisors representative, representatives from this from the city of Fairfield and the Fairfield Area Chamber of Commerce. And so those entities were all involved in this core committee. And they all worked very, very hard in putting together an event of this magnitude, which ended up with 400 people, 300 and some horses, and about 50 wagons that we took on the event.
Now, was all that work, that's a ton of work. Was that all volunteer?
It's all volunteer. We're a volunteer committee. No one was paid to do the work, and it was a volunteer.
If you were all volunteering to put in almost 2 years of work on something as volunteers, you must have thought it was really important to pull off this event. What do you feel? What made it so important to you guys?
Well, we feel it's a historical challenge. Most of us would be once in a lifetime situation. Now, there were some. We had one member of the Jefferson County Fair Board who rode 50 years ago, Orville Brown, and so he's got to go twice, and many in his family got to go twice. For me, it was a once in a lifetime. I did not participate in 1954, and so I felt that it was worthy of my time to work on a historical event such as this.
And what in the end did you feel like? Was it pretty rewarding? Like you felt like it was worth it in the end after it was over?
I felt our committee did a super job. It was very successful, and not only my opinion, and I would probably be biased, from the committee, but from the individuals that were on the trip, the project people. They said it was very well organized, and that it was something that they were proud to have been a part of. And so that made us all feel good, that they came back after the fact and said, hey, super job. And in fact, they're starting to say, we'd like to go next year. I said, no way. No way. And so, down the road, will they have another one 50 years from now? Who knows? I will say, and this is my, Ron Bauer's personal opinion, with the ramifications of liability insurance. 50 years from now, if it changes like it has in the last 50, it will be very difficult to be able to get liability insurance for such an event. And then with our highway system, the fast speed that we're moving, fast cars and trucks are not conducive and not compatible with slow-moving horses and wagons.
It's pretty. Was there any part of the route this time that was dangerous in that respect? Or?
The route this time was on secondary roads. We did not take any U.S. highways for the fact of the high-speed trucks and cars. We were on some blacktop, pavement, and gravel. And yes, there were some concerns and there were some close encounters because the secondary roads do not have a wide shoulder. No place to drive a wagon and a team. No place to ride a horse. The ditches aren't conducive to riding animals in the ditches. And so that means you take up half the road. And so when you're stretched out 2 miles, you become a hindrance to traffic that's wanting to pass or meet. And so yes, it was a challenge.
Did anything happen in terms of that? Was there any? I don't think there was, but.
We got along very well. We had a couple, incidents, fender benders, whatever you call it. We had a couple, 3 people got hurt, but overall we were very pleased with the outcome.
Good. So where did you go? So you didn't ride, but you went along the whole way, right?
Yes, as project manager, it was my duty each morning to make sure that our equipment got moved to the next overnight site. And we're talking about, we had John Deere Gators for support vehicles in the campground. We had to move those. We had to move picnic tables. We had to move the water wagon. We had to move the hay wagons. We had to move support trailers that were hauling some horses. And that kept us busy all through the day to just go to the next site. And then as project manager, I had to make sure that I had the food all lined up once I got there, that we had traffic control under control, because at intersections we needed help from the law enforcement.
It's crazy. It seems like crazy.
It was very interesting. Yeah.
And yet, throughout all that, you think pretty much everybody who organized it said that they,
yeah.
you know.
And for people to say, I had a good time, after you heard this one interview up at 4 o'clock, and many of them were, because one of the things we had to do each morning before we left camp was to move the support vehicles, the pickups and trailers that they hauled their animals in. They had to be moved to the next site, 25 miles away, and then we had buses to bus those people back to breakfast and to get on their wagons and horses and head out at 7 o'clock. We pulled out at 7 o'clock every day. And so that was quite a task, just to have school buses lined up at 6:30 in the morning, and to get everybody up and moved out. Yeah. It was different. And it was, I just wish that somehow we could have had less miles per day so they'd had more time to visit. One drawback was you were so raced and so tired at night, you didn't have time to make the new friends that you would have liked to. You didn't have time to roam around the camp. Now, when I say camp, we're talking, we rented 30-acre fields. And, so it was something that you just didn't walk the whole thing to find anybody because you were tired. So we had a big spread, a 30-acre field, and maybe we didn't use it all, but, we used a big share of it.
But I think that probably, even though, I think people were beat. I've seen the footage of people when they're rolling in, when they're leaving, they're deciding
Yeah.
when they're coming in, they don't, they're dead, they're dying. But it's like also, they got the chance to visit with each other when they eat meals, and there was kind of
a little bit, a little opportunity for that.
I wonder, I haven't ever asked anybody about that, if they've made any long trips.
Yeah, I'm sure they made some,
But they could have made a lot
more, if we could have had more time.
Yeah.
You know, we were very fortunate with
With the weather
one of the things
that you dread on an event such as this is rain and high humidity,
high 90.
temperature. And we were very fortunate. In fact, it almost got cold. We had to bring out sweatshirts. We never had one drop of rain, and we never had one 90-degree day. So we were really blessed with the weather. And in fact, they had coats and blankets and sweatshirts out. That's how cool it got. And so that helped both man and animal.
Yeah, definitely. It gets pretty uncomfortable in the middle of the Iowa summer. What was it like, is there, do you want to go through maybe stop by stop and say, is there any stories that you want to share or anything you remember at each stop or each day's ride or anything like that?
We can start.
Right. Of course, our first night we stayed here in Fairfield at the Jefferson County Fairgrounds. That was that was our organizational day when everyone checked in. So we stayed all night here. We had a band come in that night. We had the Fairfield Booster Club serve an excellent meal. Probably they say the best meal of the whole event. And then on Sunday morning, 7 o'clock, we were ready to go. We headed to Ottumwa, to the Ottumwa Industrial Airport. That was our stop on that Sunday. And of course, the first day, you're a little concerned about getting everybody out. We were able to get everybody out. We had a couple incidents on the road that day, but everyone came through all right. And so
I think the first ones pulled into the airport about 3:30 that afternoon.
So we were in there in good shape. We had a tremendous meal served by the Wapello County Cattlemen in Ottumwa. The spot we had was at the industrial airport where it was real flat, grassy area, so it was very easy to set up camp. The Wapello County Rural Fire Department came out and helped us with water. We had tanks sitting around, and they helped us fill tanks to water the horses. And we had some entertainment come in, and it just turned out to be an excellent first day. Everyone was in good spirits. And I think it's important the first night, this tremendous meal we got everyone in a good mood to start. And I think that's very important, that you get started off on a high note. Because if you start on a low note, then you're uphill all the week trying to gain back. And so if you start on a high note, everyone was in a good mood, and away we went.
Second day, we left the airport in Ottumwa and headed to Oskaloosa. Now,
Oskaloosa presented a little challenge for us because we had problems finding an overnight site. The fairgrounds was booked with auto races. And so we finally
ended up at the DOT
maintenance garage on the west edge of Oskaloosa, about a 10-acre site. Now, I remember earlier I said we were working with 30-acre sites. Well, this we had to reduce down to 10 acres. But we got everybody in there, and everyone worked and
cooperated,
and we made it work.
And
that's the night we had homemade ice cream.
Had again a
tremendous meal
served there,
homemade ice cream, and we didn't have entertainment because everyone was so tired. We just didn't have time for entertainment. And DOT was super to work with. No, they didn't. No. Entertainment was not on their minds at that time. They just wanted to get rested, bedded down,
and get ready to go out the next morning. And the next
morning from Oskaloosa to Monroe. That was our longest day, mileage-wise. That was our toughie. And there's just no direct route on secondary roads from Oskaloosa to Monroe. If we could have taken a 4-lane, yes. that would have been a shorter. But of course we just couldn't.
for traffic. So
Some of them had to be trucked in that day, but most
most of them made it. And
Monroe,
we had a 30-acre field right on the southeast edge of Monroe. John Van Ryswick, we rented that from him, and he worked with the local Kiwanis Club and the local school, and they had set up a tremendous meal for us and had entertainment, just took care of everything. And then the next morning they even had breakfast for us. And we, we're bussed in and out to get to the meals, and that was the largest crowd to see us at night was in Monroe. In fact, we got so many people, we had a traffic jam on the gravel road in front of our side. We couldn't get people in or out for a while. We just had so many people coming to look us over, meet friends and things of that sort.
And you guys you had a parade in Pella, right, on the way up? Is that on that day?
That would be
Noon.
That would be
Noon.
The noon stop was in Pella at Vermeer Company,
And we did go through town then, right after the noon hour. Went on the north side of the square in Pella.
Yeah. Did they like that?
Oh, people lined up everywhere watching us. Tremendous. I'd received a lot of calls. People got my cell phone number somehow, and they were calling me all day. What time you gonna be in Pella, and where can we go? And so I'd say, well, just get on along Washington Street, and Washington Street kind of goes to the north side of the square in Pella. And
I said, we'll be there sometime around the noon hour. Well, it would have been about 1 o'clock. That was the problem, being specific with people where we were going to be at a certain time. That became a little bit difficult.
That was the longest day, right?
Yeah.
Mileage-wise?
yeah.
The longest day, 28 miles. That's just too far with a horse. But we had no choice, so we had to do it.
Do you feel like people would have been able to handle, in 54 they really rode less mileage, right? Because they just went 34.
They went 34 and then what is now 163. So they had less miles, yes.
And it's funny because I always sort of think of the people in 1954 as being, just because they're sort of more used to riding horses or something, maybe they were a little bit tougher. But really, they didn't. They ended up riding less miles.
Yeah, well, they weren't any tougher than we were. We had some tough people this year. We had some tough people this year. So, on the last day from Monroe to Des Moines, or just this side of Des Moines. Actually, we stayed in Pleasant Hill, and our noon stop was in
A little town of
Vandalia. Just a little spot on the road,
just a church. There's about all there is, and they had a little parking lot.
but it was enough that we could get in. And I guess we haven't talked about how we ate at noon, but we had sack lunches every day. And the sack lunches were donated by Hy-Vee food stores. Each store along the route would donate the noon lunch for us. And we would pick these up in the morning. Our lunch trailer was a semi-trailer, a semi-reefer. The reefer trailer donated by Dickey's in Packwood and driven by Terry Bonnet here in Fairfield. Terry donated his tractor to pull that semi-trailer. And so every morning Terry would back up to the Hy-Vee dock and load up on pallets these 400 sack lunches. And so we'd put them in a refrigerated unit so they were cold and no spoilage and no food sickness. And then we would take them to the noon stop. He would drive his semi, and then our workers would stand at the back door of the semi, and the people would just ride by and we would hand them the sack lunches. So many of them didn't even have to get out of their wagons. And then they may drive on up and stop along the road and eat their lunch. But we were there to hand them out. That's how we handled every noon stop. And, on a deal like this, you're concerned about safety of the people, the participants, safety of the animals, and you're concerned about food safety too. And so we've tried to put special emphasis on food safety. You know, if it's hot food, you keep it hot, and if it's cold food, you keep it cold. And that was one thing I was really, really strict about. And as far as I know, we had no one develop sickness. Where 50 years ago, we've heard some stories that there was some sickness. The other thing that's different, 50 years ago, the preliminary work on overnight sites, all of the food service and everything was done by the Iowa National Guard, the unit located here in Fairfield. And of course this year with the Iraq situation, we asked the Guard to help us, but they said no, they would not be able to, and then we knew why, because you know, in the fall the 224th were activated. And so we were not able to receive help from the National Guard like they did 50 years ago. So we had to either hire that done or we had to do it ourselves and get volunteers to do it. So that was a major difference from 50 years ago.
Yeah.
The logistics.
Well, it just seems like even though the National Guard was doing it, I mean, just when you talk about, I mean, I guess there are these type of challenges also in there before, but just when you talk about feeding people, just getting 400 people a stacked lunch 4 days in a row seems like an insane task to me. It seems like.
But where you can load them on pallets, you never have to handle them. We never had to handle them until we handed them to the participants.
Well,
No problem.
it's quite an accomplishment anyway.
No problem. The other thing was how this project differed from 50 years ago. In today's world, everyone that owns a horse has a horse trailer. And a high percentage of it has a camper to go along. And so we had to worry about logistics for all of the trailers, pickups, and campers. Where 50 years ago, no one had horse trailers. No one had a camper. They didn't have to worry about those things. When they went to camp, they just had the people on horses and wagons. And so that made a big difference in how you would plan things out.
I got some old pictures, some great old pictures of somebody who rode. I can't quite remember his name right now, but who rode in 54.
Yeah.
Hadn't done it, but he had the negative sitting at home with the Loretta Deere. I don't know if you know her. Nice, crossing great. Set up a camp.
Loretta was one of our committee workers. She worked on registration with Gay Chapman.
Yeah, and Gabe Chapman's the one who shot all the
Yeah,
video.
so,
So,
they were super people.
well, I guess you've done a very good job for me. Probably the best interview I've had so far. Thank you so much. If there's anything else is there anything you just want to say about it in general, or just looking back now, we're 6 months or 8 months out or something and away from it, and is there anything you want to say, like, or just that you guys did it or anything like that?
You know, as I reflect back, we're 4 or 5 months after the fact now, as I reflect back on what happened in August, I met a super group of people. I made a lot of new friends. You know, we were represented by 17 states on this now. I really haven't emphasized that. We had 17 states and about 85 communities were on this event. And so we had horses hauled in from Montana, we had horses hauled in from Florida, we had horses hauled from Texas. And so people would do those things. Why would someone haul a horse from Florida to Fairfield, Iowa to ride to Des Moines? Well, because their parents did it 50 years ago, and the Florida people, their parents were on it this year, so we had 3 generations in this one group, we had 4 generations in one family. And so I made a tremendous number of friends when I run into them at events, when I run into them at the Iowa State Fair, we'll have something to talk about. And I'm just so happy I was able to be a part of it. And yeah, it was a lot of work, but you know, what the heck. You know, I got to do something with my time. And I've now, well, I retired back in June, so I did have a couple months there of a retired life
To spend
100% on it.
and I was
Fortunate that my employer before that would let me spend some time on it. And so that's one advantage I did have, is I had maybe more time than anybody else on the committee to do that. And so that's kind of why I took the leadership on it, and appreciate the opportunity to do it. And no, I won't do another one. No, I'm not interested in going on another one. But I'm thankful I was able to be a part of this.
Good. Oh, just before I almost forgot, can we talk a little bit about when you guys went into Des Moines, into the state fair?
I can read it too, yeah. We haven't
talked about
sponsorship either. We had to cover the financial thing. That's a big. We talk about that, and you can cut it out or you want to do with it. But I mentioned we developed a budget to get 200 people, 300 and some horses to Des Moines, Iowa. Took quite a bit of money. In fact, our initial budget was $150,000. We probably ended up about $130,000. And we financed this event by 3 different methods. Of course, we had a registration fee. We had to keep a registration fee that people could be able to afford to pay and be able to bring a family. And so we felt we did that. We also then went to the Iowa State Fair Board and asked for a grant from the Sesquicentennial committee that they have. And so they were able to fund a third of the trip, and then another third was done by corporate sponsorship. And so that's how we financed. And without the corporate sponsorship, which would be very difficult to obtain if you went every other year or something like that. People saying, well, let's do this in 5 years. Well, I'm not sure the corporate sponsorship would be receptive to that. And for what it cost us to put this event on, I don't believe the participants could finance it themselves. Now, that's not to say it couldn't be done, but the financial aspect was a big
item that
maybe people that weren't on the front lines don't really think about it. So.
now that last day, August 11th, opening day of the Iowa State Fair, 2004, 150th anniversary.
A big event in Iowa, a big event for the Iowa State Fair. So we left camp about 9 o'clock in the morning. We were camped in Pleasant Hill, 5 miles from Iowa State Fairgrounds. So we had about an hour's ride. We wanted that to get the horses, to get some of the friskiness out of the horses, because when we hit the Iowa State Fairgrounds, we're talking about wall-to-wall people that we had run these animals down through. And so we were able to do that, got on the fairgrounds, and it was a tremendous hit with the people there. I and 2 other fellows on the committee, we announced as the people rode by. I think it took us about 30 minutes to get the group through, and just a tremendous way to open the 150th Iowa State Fair. And then that day we kept about 10 or 12 wagons there on the fairgrounds for people to observe, a touch and feel situation, kept the horses there. And then all through the fair we had an exhibit booth on the fairgrounds where we exhibited all of our memorabilia, where we had newspaper clippings from 50 years ago, and we had t-shirts to sell and some things like that. And so we were there all during the fair, and we were able to talk to people, and it was just so pleasant to visit with people and hear their comments about the caravan ride to Des Moines.
Well,
Oh.
I think that's good.
Well, that's a lot. That's a lot. And you can, this pretty well covers all the daily